I'm kicking it with Elma. Tune in, baby.
Can I kick it?
This is Elma here at the Soho Theatre in Dean Street, London. Kicking it with me today is Des Bishop. As an observer, I thought the hardest place appeared to be the loyalist area in Belfast, and there wasn't a lot of laughs going on there. And you said as well that the gig that you did there was the strangest of your life. Can you explain why?
Well, when you asked me earlier about, like, was I out of my depth anywhere, I was going to say that I was a little out of my depth in the loyalist area because their social exclusion and their marginalization is on entirely different lines because it's sectarian and it's also has a large historical backstory which is very intense and hasn't really worked itself out yet. You're dealing with people who have a very narrow bunch of issues that they focus on. So obviously there's a lot of hate in that society, very divided society, and I was from a tribe that was in opposition to them, according to them. Now, they made me feel welcome, which was absolutely fine. I was dealing with some of my own prejudice because I was actually brought up to hate these people, being Irish American, and sort of being brought up in that, like Irish American Republican ethos. I was kind of like maybe really, really ultra sensitive myself about wanting to fit in with these people because I was really curious to learn, but they were the most different. They also hadn't a clue who I was. All the other areas were kind of excited about the fact that I was there because they knew me from the TV. Loyalists had never seen me before. They don't watch RTE unless there's a good movie on, then they quietly watch it and they don't tell their UVF commander. The issues are very different and their humor is very sectarian, and obviously their humor is sectarian to the point of view of they like to make fun of Catholics. I actually don't find the humor about Catholics that funny, but I was happy for them to let it out. I really wasn't getting offended in any way, but, my humor was kind of trying to be sort of like witty and sarcastic about this experience that I had there, but they just weren't finding it that funny. They didn't trust me 100% in that way. They trusted me to do the workshops, but when I was on stage with this heavily loyalist crowd in front of me, including Billy Hutchinson, the signer of the Good Friday Agreement, and a professed murderer of Catholics in the 1970s, like, admits to killing them. But a great man, like, and a progressive man. They just weren't 100% happy with the sort of, like, slightly cynical Irish-American Catholic guy, having little jokes about their neighborhood because they didn't trust me in the way that people from Ballymun trusted me, Yeah. That was the only reason why that was difficult. But it was still really interesting, and I actually think it was the greatest achievement because, well, first of all, nobody goes into these areas. Irish people are very judgmental about loyalists, like really dismissive that they're just a bunch of hate-filled sectarians. It's so much more complicated than that. A very fearful community, their culture is completely changing. Some of that's positive because it was a very negative culture, but there's other aspects of it that need to be celebrated, and they just feel completely under threat. Now, that's for them to sort out, but there's no sympathy that comes from either the nationalist community or from the southern community. Like, they have no sympathy at all, and like that's the responsibility of us, like non-loyalists, to start to be more open-minded. Whatever, we can talk about how narrow-minded they are till we're blue in the face, but it doesn't change anything, so I actually thought it was the greatest one because actually it was the most challenging and the most for people to learn from about how we need to be like. We just need to start to evolve because that society is going to evolve. But I think the sooner we get a greater understanding of each other, the better, I
think communication and things like people like yourself going into it makes a difference.
I don't know if it makes a difference. I mean, you chip away slowly. I think sometimes, I think 9/11 actually had a lot more positive impact on the future of Northern Ireland than a lot of the other cross-community things did because, in the end, Irish America completely lost any lingering sense of wanting to support so-called terrorism, right? And all of a sudden, people's perceptions changed. And then all of a sudden, Sinn Féin, Martin McGuinness, Jerry Adams, they knew that we can no longer, sort of live with the identity of being freedom fighters and terrorists. They were even further committed to peace. And that just brought a sense of momentum that we all need to push this thing forward. So I think you can chip away with things like I did, but I think sometimes you're just powerless to, trends in society, and I think at the moment it's very positive in Ireland, like the Queen is coming to visit. I personally, I'm not a fan of the monarchy, but what I do think is positive is that Ireland has matured as a nation and they realize that it's not a threat to our identity or our culture to have the British monarch come and visit a number of places, and I think when you see Martin McGuinness and Peter Robinson, but they're able to work together for the future of Northern Ireland, you see that those things have much greater power than a lot of the community work that gets done. You know, I think that's a slower process.
What do you think generally the people who took part in the series in the different areas, Cork and Limerick and stuff, got out of it?
The people who did the comedy?
Yeah.
Well, some of them got careers. Two of the guys from Ballymun are like full-time comedians now.
Oh, which ones?
Eric Lawler and Will White. Then a few of the guys from Cork kept it up down in Cork, not to the same success. But then one of them, Kevin Goldsmith, who was the one that showed up drunk to the first class, eventually he kept doing comedy, but then he stopped for a while. But he stopped drinking, went back to college, has a degree in communications now, and is back doing stand-up, but also has a full degree. He rang me to say that the whole reason he's in college is because of Join the Hood. And in fact, when he applied, his entire presentation, he did media, not communications. His entire presentation was based on his experience that he had of making a documentary and how that had showed him that he had an interest in media. And so he's finished now. So he's back being a comedian, but also like working full time.
Do you think it just gave them the confidence as well to stand up there? I mean, and a few million people watching them.
Well, a few million, you wish.
I don't know. The whole population.
Yeah. Well, if you were to get 100% audience, yeah. But I don't know. I can't say. Okay. But
that's a good outcome. That's a really great outcome, actually.
Yeah, no, it was. And also, they weren't heavily exposed. You know, it wasn't very exploitative. It didn't take over their lives like a lot of these other sort of reality shows do. You know, it was pretty low-key. And I mean, I guess they had to deal with some local jealousy and things, but in general, I think most of them will have found it a positive experience, and none of them have to deal with this thing of they were once the guys in Joy in the Hood. You know, there's no real negative thought. No, not.
What did you get out of it?
Out of Joy in the Hood? Yeah. Well, not much really. Like in the sense that people always say, like, you know, did it affect your life? And like, I knew a lot of. I was heavily involved in that work really anyway in my spare time. I'm not connected to comedy, and it's still the same. I still live in Dolphins Bond. Like I still have 10-year-old kids calling up to my door every day, like taking the piss and looking for free DVDs. And, you know, I still live in one of those areas. And I enjoyed a bit of banter with, you know, because I'm involved with addicts. Like I know people that get clean and then they go back out, and I see them in Dolphins Bond and they're scoring again. And I enjoyed a bit of banter. It didn't really affect my life. That it still remains the same. It was just fun, you know. It was a very fun thing to do, and it's very satisfying. I took all those guys on tour with me afterwards, like different gigs. They would open up for me, and some of them evolved as comedians. That was very satisfying. Some of them didn't, but they still enjoyed the experience. You know, it wasn't for everybody. I mean, a lot of people try stand-up. Not that many succeed, so our success rate was pretty good. So, yeah, it was just, personally, it was just satisfying. It's nice to make a good TV show, you know?
Yeah, great TV show.
I'm kicking it with Elma. Tune in, baby.